Remember this? This is the Caddx Protos drone, and it's the drone where Caddx introduced its new Ascent digital FPV system. And frankly, whenever somebody comes up with a new digital FPV system, something to rival DJI and Walksnail, Caddx, why did you release a digital system to rival your own digital system? Never mind, that's not important. Whenever somebody releases a new digital system, especially when at this price point, you got to take notice. But it was not quite ready for prime time. Well, that was my opinion anyway. The only receiver that was available was these goggles. There was no standalone video receiver or like, okay, box goggles are fine, but like you'd like a little bit more, at least like the option of a little bit more. And the video transmitter here on the drone, like 100 milliwatts, it was surprisingly good range for 100 milliwatts, but like, come on, I need more. I need bigger numbers. Today is the day when all that comes true. Oh, that's such a nice case. We're going to fold that up. We're going to put that away. Because this is the Walksnail Ascent Lite Plus video transmitter, and it's got some of the performance, output power, features, frame rate, the ability to record and transmit live audio. It's got some of those things that I said that the original system needed to have before it was really good enough to be considered as a full-on primetime replacement for your whatever video system you're currently using. And, this is the Ascent VRX Pro, a standalone video receiver that can be used with any set of goggles that has an HDMI input. And today, we're going to look at these two products and see if the Caddx Ascent video system is finally ready for prime time, at least in my opinion. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Here's how this video is going to go. We're going to unbox these products, we're going to take a look at them on the bench, and we're going to talk about their features and specifications, just give you kind of a big picture overview. And as much as I like to just slap it in a drone, take it out and fly it, because that's what we're all really here for, without knowing, like, what resolution does it support? What frame rates? Those are the kind of things that you got to have in the back of your head when we do the flight test. Then we'll go ahead, we'll install it on a drone and put them on the goggles, and any lessons that come up, any insights that come up from doing that, you'll get those. Then I'll take it outside and I'll fly it and we'll see how it performs. That's kind of like the dessert at the end of this video. But we're going to start with the appetizer, and that is the size and the features. And as far as size goes, holy cow. This thing is so much smaller than I imagined it was going to be. Here's a good old DJI O4 air unit, and here is the Ascent Lite Plus video transmitter. When they say light, they really mean it. How light is it? Let's get a scale. Well, just for comparison, the DJI O4 Pro air unit comes in at just under 32 grams. The Caddx Ascent Lite Plus comes in at 10.2 grams. Does that make it usable on like a 65 millimeter whoop? No, I would say no. That's like half the weight, more than half the weight of a typical 65 millimeter whoop. But I think it's perfectly feasible on a 75. And frankly, I've seen 85s with the O4 Pro on it. So like somebody's going to slap this on a 65 millimeter just because I said it couldn't be done. But this definitely is more accessible for something in that size class than many of the digital video transmitters we've seen come before. And I could not be happier that it ships with a standard DJI style plug. And this is something that HD0 has done for a little while and Walksnail has not done, and I have complained about it. Basically, DJI set the standard for digital video transmitter plugs. They just are the 500-pound gorilla. They did it a certain way, and all the flight controller manufacturers kind of fell into line. And so since your flight controller comes with a plug that will work for any digital video transmitter, all the other digital video transmitter manufacturers should just use the DJI standard. And it's going to hurt because it's the DJI standard, but just think of it as the Betaflight standard for digital video transmitters, and it won't sting as much. Walksnail has done that with this. I don't know what that is on my hand. I think this is the first time Walksnail has done it. It's the first time I've seen it anyway. It's grease from my drawer. I touched the rail of my drawer when I got the video transmitter out. Now I have grease on my hand. As far as specs go, well, I could read you the specs, or if I were a much more professional creator, I would make a graphic and put it on screen. But instead, we're going to take a look at this page, which was provided by Caddx, and we can see that, so there are two products here, the Ascent Lite Plus and the Ascent Lite. I believe the Ascent Lite is the original video transmitter that came in the Caddx Protos, and if we look here, we can see 100 milliwatts output power. That's consistent with that. First, let's start with the prices, because the prices are what makes this so compelling. When you look at the performance, you might be tempted to say, well, DJI does better. Heck, even Walksnail's own system does better. But the real killer here is the price. $35 for the Ascent Lite. That's the camera and video transmitter together. $40 for the Ascent Lite Plus, which for that extra $5 that you're just going to do that, right? Like nobody's going to buy the Ascent Lite at this point. And then they've also got a column here with the BetaFPV P1 Air, which is BetaFPV's similar but not the same low budget video transmission system. And I say similar but not the same, and let's just clear the air about this. BetaFPV has the P1 video system, and there are a couple other similar low-priced video systems being put out by other manufacturers like HDLRC and SkyZone. And those BetaFPV, HDLRC, and SkyZone, those systems are in an ecosystem called ArtLynk, ARTLYNK, I think, ArtLynk. And they're called ArtLynk because they are made by a company called Artisan. Artisan makes the silicon, makes the chipset that is in all of them. The cool thing about that system is that they're all compatible. Okay, so the HDLRC, SkyZone, and BetaFPV, the ArtLynk ecosystem is all compatible. They can all cross-bind and they all cross-receive and so forth. The Caddx Ascent system is not a part of the Artisan ArtLynk system, even though there are some similarities in the hardware, and in fact, some people have speculated that if Caddx wanted to, they could make firmware that was compatible. But I don't blame them for not doing it, because Caddx is, like, the performance of this system compared to the ArtLynk system, the BetaFPV P1 specifically, well, take a look. Here with the Ascent Lite Plus, we have 1080p 60, 1080p 100, and 1080p 120. The BetaFPV Air, only 1080p 60. We've also got 720p 60 and 100 and 120. So we've got a variety of resolutions and frame rates. 35 millisecond latency, that's advertised latency. That obviously has to be verified with testing, but advertised 35 millisecond latency is like not quite as good as the DJI system at its best, but it's getting down into that, hey, this is not like the worst thing in the world range, unless you're Nils Vo, in which case you think that's the worst thing in the world and you want to gag, but you would gag even more with this 60 millisecond latency for the BetaFPV P1 Air. Again, that is advertised, that's not verified. So I'm glad Caddx Ascent is not just saying, hey, we're just going to buy into the ArtLynk ecosystem because they're like doing some things better than anything I've seen from the ArtLynk system, which has its own merits, but we're here to talk about the Caddx system, so we'll stick to that. The new Ascent Lite Plus VTX has 500 milliwatts output power compared to 100 milliwatts for the Ascent Lite and 200 milliwatts for the BetaFPV P1. The claimed range is completely meaningless because actual range will vary, but the claimed range is 8 kilometers for the Ascent Lite Plus, 3 kilometers for the Ascent Lite, and 5 kilometers for the P1 Air. Here's a big one. Audio recording. So many people are so annoyed that digital systems don't do audio recording, and not just audio recording, but audio transmission back to the pilot. Now, this system will not do audio transmission back to the pilot. It will do audio recording on the drone. So your DVR will have audio, and that's something. But Caddx tells me that the new Cine goggles, which don't exist yet, will have the ability to transmit live audio back to the pilot. And as far as I know, this is the first digital system that has actually included that as a built-in feature. I believe you could hack that capability into the original V1 DJI Air unit, but it's the first digital system that includes that. That is going to be compelling for some people in and of itself. But the Cine goggles don't exist yet, and I always say do not buy a product based on promises of future performance, because sometimes, yes, Caddx promises future things and then doesn't deliver them, so maybe it'll happen and maybe it won't. But it's cool that they're thinking that direction. Auto bandwidth is a feature that the Caddx VTXs support that the competing ArtLynk system doesn't support, at least as of today. Auto bandwidth means you start at a high bandwidth, like 25 megabits per second, and as you go further and further away and your link gets worse and worse, the bandwidth reduces, but the link remains stable. Your image quality sort of gradually degrades and improves as you get closer and further away. The Ascent system also has frequency hopping, and that means it will be able to jump frequencies around as opposed to being locked to a specific frequency. This is a blessing and a curse, because if you're flying with other pilots, you want to stay on a single frequency. You don't want to jump around and potentially interfere with them. But it is nice to have the option that if the system detects interference or degradation in performance, if you're flying by yourself, it has the ability to jump to a different frequency and hopefully clear that up. Now we move on to the VRX Pro, and there isn't going to be as much to say about this until we get to the looking at the menu and the interface section of the video, because it basically supports all of the features that we previously discussed. You can get an idea for the size. Now it's going to mount either on a tripod. There is a 1/4 20 lug in the bottom, or more likely you're going to find a way to attach it to your goggles. I guess double-sided tape to the front of the goggles, or some 3D printed something. I don't know. It's got these two big chunky Omni antennas on the top, and although you can't see them, it has patch antennas on the inside. There are 4 antennas in this device. If we come around to the side, we've got the basic interface. There's a 5-way joystick, a back button, and a DVR record button. It does have built-in DVR, as well as, depending on the air unit, it may have onboard recording as well. And here on the bottom, we've got a USB that is used for firmware updates and offloading footage from the DVR. Maybe we've also got an SD card, so of course you can just take the SD card out. And there is an HDMI, and it is notable that it is a full-size HDMI. Now that's probably what you would expect, but I can't help but complain that the HDMI cable provided with the VRX is a full-to-full, and it's short. Like most, I can't think of a goggle, an FPV goggle, that has a full-size HDMI. It should be a full-to-mini. That full-to-full is basically useless without a mini adapter, and that's kind of annoying that they've done that. I don't know why they've done that. Here's our channel selection. I can't help but notice that we have only 3 channels available to us. So when the system says it can do channel hopping, it's only hopping between 3 channels. It's not really doing like frequency hopping like Express LRS does. That's not that surprising. Like, I don't think DJI really does that either. But it doesn't seem to have very much granularity in which channel it's going to select. Nevertheless, if there's a Wi-Fi router like up on channel 8, it could jump away from it. Let's see here. We'll go to settings, transmit power, 500 milliwatts and 500 milliwatts auto. I think we're going to do auto, right? Auto, frame rate. 120 frames per second. Heck yeah. We'll get that latency down. Oh, no, cancel. So if I set that to 120 frames per second, then this screen will not work because it can't read 120 frames per second. 1080 versus 720. We're going to try both of those. Preference, fixed wing versus low latency. I see. So we can have the choice of high latency or low latency, but they don't want to say high latency, so they say fixed wing. The idea there, I think, is that you can have a more reliable link with maybe better image quality if you trade off for latency. We're obviously going to choose low latency. Bandwidth, what are my choices here? 20 megabits per second, 20, 10, 5, or auto. We're going to leave that at auto. We'll see how well that works. Let's see here. Camera settings. Okay, so we do have the option to do saturation, exposure, sharpness, contrast, white balance. We can do all these things. 16:9 versus 4:3. Which is the camera native? Neither. I can't change it. So this is 16:9 only. Oh, this is good. Takeoff, record, stop, delay. So that's pretty cool. It can be set to auto record when you arm, but the problem is that then when you disarm, it just stops immediately. And usually, like, you'd like to get the end of your flight, especially if you're crashing or something, you want it to keep recording after you disconnect. So that will, if I'm reading it correctly, continue recording for 25 seconds after you disarm. That actually makes the takeoff recording much more useful. I like that a lot. Recording time, 5 minutes. No. Keep all. I think keep means don't split it at all. Let's just set it to 30 minutes. I don't want it splitting the DVR. I don't like that. It's the VRX DVR bitrate. Set that as high as possible. 50 meg, sure. All right, there we go. Just got the video transmitter alien taped to the top plate here. And if we zoom in on the camera, Hold on. First of all, you can see that this is a 14mm camera. This frame is sized for a 19mm camera, so I've just jury-rigged it. Yep, it's mounted. In case you're, oh, how did he get it in there? Was it some fancy 3D print? Nope. And I'm happy to say that it is definitely possible in the camera settings to flip the image, because I mounted this upside down because it made the cable route more neatly, and then the image was upside down. I just went in there, camera settings, flip 180, done. Let's talk about the latency of this system, because Caddx claims a latency of as low as 35 milliseconds. Well, they claim 35 milliseconds, but we all know that's not always the truth. Number one, the latency goes up as you get further away and the signal gets weaker. And that's true for Walksnail, it's true for Caddx, it's true for all these digital systems, including DJI. But more importantly, that reported number often isn't achieved in real life. The lowest number that I actually saw when I had the video transmitter and the video receiver like right up next to each other, so basically as strong as it could be, was around 45 milliseconds. Now, remember, I was not using that 120 frame per second mode because I don't have a display device, and I'm not sure there exists a display device other than maybe a gaming monitor that can display 120 frame per second 720p feed. There certainly isn't an FPV goggle that can do it. Wink, wink. I wonder if Caddx is going to release something like that at some point in the future. But for now, it doesn't exist, so we have to test at 60 frames per second. And the minimum latency I saw was around 45 milliseconds. But is that the actual glass-to-glass latency? I tested, and I can tell you the answer. If you want to know more about how I tested, I did this method outlined by Niels Vo. The method has existed before Niels Vo, but he created a very useful website that sets up a test pattern that makes it very easy to gather this data. If you want to know more about that, I'll link that video in the video description below. Then I did something that I'm very proud of. I vibe coded an app to process the data automatically. Normally, you have to track this by hand. You have to count the frames where the light turns on, and then you look over here at the goggle and you continue to frame ahead until the light turns on, and you subtract the difference, and that gives you the latency. And I vibe coded an app to do it all automatically, and here's the data. Yay! I'll make another video about that app. It's not ready for prime time yet, but it is good enough to give us the data. And you can see here I've got 54 data points, which is way more than I would have done if I was doing this by hand, and it shows that the latency is an average of about 60 milliseconds, with a minimum of about 50 milliseconds and a maximum of 66.7 milliseconds. Now bear in mind, some of that is probably due, like if we look at this 16 frame latency and then we go back one frame, do you see that this is not quite fully bright yet, and now it's fully bright? And then if we go forward to here where the goggle turned on, like there's a little bit of wiggliness in the data. So that max of 66.7 is probably just the wiggliness of the data. The min of 50 milliseconds might also be the wiggliness of the data, although I will say, when I did it by hand, I got 50 milliseconds. But the average is about 60 milliseconds, and that is with about 45 milliseconds displaying on the goggles. And you might say, well, that's because the goggles themselves are adding latency on their HDMI input. But I asked Ryan Quellet, and he told me that the HDMI input on the HD0 Goggles 2 is 1 millisecond from the input to the screen. I have no way of verifying that, but I think he probably is right. So it seems to me like the number that you're seeing, that 45 milliseconds, I'm not able to independently verify that. The best I saw was about 50 milliseconds, and the average I saw was about 60 milliseconds. That's just one set of data, and I'm sure that guys like Niels Vo or Madstech will also test it, but that's what I got. Nevertheless, I will say that subjectively, this felt way better to fly than the BetaFPV P1 system. So even though the measured latency that I got for this system is about on par what the BetaFPV's reported latency is, maybe the BetaFPV's reported latency is even higher. I don't know. I didn't test that one. Why didn't I test that one? Hey, it's Joshua from the future. A thunderstorm's coming in, and I gotta finish this review before the thunderstorm hits. But before I do that, I gotta pay the bills. Please join my Patreon. You like this content? Am I helping you make better buying decisions, solve problems, spend your money wisely, or just entertaining you? Pay me. Patreon. less than the cost of a pack of props every month. You can't afford it. If you don't want to, no hard feelings. There's a lot of people I don't support either. But if I've earned it today, their link is down below. And if I haven't earned it, you keep watching the content. I'll keep trying. Whew, I'm kind of excited. Okay, we're just testing the video system. We are not testing how the drone flies. I have got the patch antennas on. Ooh, 10 volts. That's not good. Yeah, annoyingly, the voltage readout in the goggles always shows the voltage the video transmitter is getting. So if you're running the video transmitter off a voltage regulator, it just shows 10 volts forever, and then it complains at you because it thinks the voltage is too low. You really need to be able to either turn off that warning, which there are other Caddx video transmitters that can do it, or change it to get voltage from the flight controller. I don't think that's accurate either. I've got the patch antennas facing back towards this corner of the property because that's just usually where I put the patch antennas when I do this kind of testing. And the first real test is going to be when we go behind the house here, see how it holds in. And honestly, it held in pretty good. Where's my bit rate? Where's my bits per second? 25 megabits per second. And we're showing about 50 milliseconds latency. That's not good. But if I go and hang out here, this is holding in shockingly well. I see hardly any degradation in image quality. The bit rate has dropped slightly, but like, this looks great. Now we're showing 38 milliseconds latency. Can that possibly be accurate? Let's go around here. How about here? So this is, we've got the barn in between us and the drone. The patch antennas are facing this way though, so it may be helping, and we are getting, I mean, the image quality for 16 to 20 megabits per second, I'm seeing a lot of resolution, 1080. Like this is impressive. Like if we try and look at this, it's like scraggle here. Now granted, I'm not moving very fast. As you move faster, the image compression kicks in, but for a static image, this looks really good. And the bit rate is holding in pretty well. The latency is terrible. 50 milliseconds is like, it's flyable, but it's bad. It's bad, it's not great. What if we fly this direction? I'm not gonna move the antennas at all. They're still, we should be like roughly at the 3 o'clock point relative to the antennas here. Just, you know. So we are coming onto the beam, but we also have a lot of foliage between us and the house. How are we doing? I'm just watching that bit rate. It's holding in pretty well. Getting down now to 8 megabits per second. 7, 8. It's, there we go, 2, 3. This is usually like the critical point where it gets bad. We can see the edges of the screen are getting blurry. That's focus mode. It allocates more bit rate to the center versus the edge, so you can see details in the center. That is something you can turn off, but I've left it on in this case because that's how they ship it. 4, 3. Hasn't gotten stuttery yet. Now it's starting to get stuttery. There we go. There's the stuttering. Let's see if we can climb. See if we can get it back if we climb. Climbing, it's coming back. So it didn't get stuttery until around 1 or 2. And honestly, I mean, I've gone further than that with like a 4-watt analog video transmitter, but honestly, this is pretty good. And now we have a Wal-Mart delivery coming up the driveway. Yeah, friend, this way, friend. This way. No, up the driveway, please. Yep, this way. Where are you going? Don't leave. What are you doing? Where are you going? Don't back out of the driveway. This is where you should deliver the groceries. Where the hell are you going? Where are you going? Deliver the groceries. Oh my God. Issa, the Walmart delivery just started to drive up the driveway, then backed out and left. Okay, well, let's try something different. Let's see if we can get that latency down. by changing. We've already got it in low latency mode, so it's doing its best. But by going to a higher frame rate, we can decrease that latency even further. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go settings, frame rate. Let's see if we can do 120. I don't think the goggles will do 120. By holding the back button for 8 seconds. I don't think these goggles will do 120. I think they're going to barf. Yes, they are barfing. They're not okay with this. These goggles will only do 100 frames per second, so I don't know what good the 120 FPS output is unless you have a display device that can do 120 FPS. And some of you are saying, wait a minute, didn't the spec sheet you showed us claim that they also supported 100 frames per second? And yes, it did, and I did not see that option in the menus or find any way to enable that, so maybe that's for future development. Which would be nice because the HD0 goggles do support 720p 100 on the HDMI input, which would lower the latency a little bit. So now I'm going to hold the back button for 8 seconds. So okay, so the 120 FPS is useless to us unless we have a goggle that can do 120, and we don't. Let's 720, so this is it, 720, 60 low latency, that's just it. I want to try to do some stuff that gets a little more fast movement for two reasons. Number one, because it'll highlight the effect of the latency, but number two, because the compression algorithm used by these digital systems, it can get like smeary, like the grass can get smeary when you start moving quickly, whereas when you're moving slowly, the compression algorithm is extremely efficient and you get a lot of details. Basically, the more static the image is, the better it can look. And the more the image is moving, the worse it can look. So I'm getting used to the latency now as I just take a couple laps, which you do, but at the same time, there's a certain ceiling on just how good you can fly when there's latency, 3.4. I'm kind of skeptical about using 1080 resolution on these digital systems where you only have 25 megabits per second bit rate. Classically, 25 megabits per second, between 12 and 25 megabits per second, in my opinion, is just about right for 720p with fast motion. Lower bit rate, it gets really smeary. 1080p, I would say between 25 and 50 is about right. And so when you max out at 25 and you're doing 1080, I think it creates a situation where static images look really good, but as soon as you start moving, you're better off with 720. Let's change this next run to 1080, and we'll do a little bit of a faster moving run and see what we think. So the question is, as I get moving here, you can see that the grass gets kind of blocky and smeary. Is that better? Is what we've got here as I'm moving better with 1080 or better with 720? You decide. You're looking at it. If you are watching this on YouTube, which you certainly are, make sure you set the resolution to 1080p or as much as 4K. If you're watching at a lower resolution, you'll see everything look crappy because YouTube looks crappy. Even if you're watching on a small screen, you get better bit rate by setting the resolution up. Moving here. Latency seems about the same. 720 versus 1080. I don't see any big differences. I'm not feeling any stuttering or anything, but certainly the latency is not as good and the responsiveness is not as good. And like as I start going faster and diving into trees and stuff, like when I hit that branch right here earlier, I hit a branch over here, and it's just because I did not have time to react to what appeared in front of me. With a little bit of planning though, see, I was real uncertain there. I dropped throttle and I just did not feel confident setting my throttle. I still don't, even if I get more of a lineup on it. I just don't feel confident setting this up. Whereas with lower latency systems, that's a thing that happens, is you just dive into gaps like this and you just feel so locked in and confident. And I know it's subjective and a feeling, so like part of me hates it because it's not scientific, but oh, see right there, I got surprised. And I know you're thinking to yourself, if you're not a convert to the Church of Latency, I know you're thinking to yourself, Bardwell, what difference could 40 or 50 milliseconds possibly have made? It's not about reaction time. It's because reaction time is much slower than that, and I agree. It's about, feeling connected and feeling in control. And It is absolutely a thing. I will take that to my grave. I will die on that hill. So like this is not good for racing or for like aggressive proximity freestyle. If I plan ahead, I can make it work. Because I see right there, well, that was full throttle too. Right there, I'm just a little behind the curve no matter what I'm doing. And if you plan ahead, you can get lines, right? But there's so many times when you're doing freestyle or racing where you're making this little last minute adjustment because your planning ahead didn't put you right where you needed to be. You dive over something, you come down, and now you got your exit line and you're getting it lined up. And latency really factors into those situations. Nevertheless, I want you to see, like, I'm not a spectacular world-class freestyle pilot, but I am, you know, I'm getting her done. She's down. Well, let's see if I can wrap this up before the thunderstorm gets here. This is a major step forward. The previous versions of this system had excess latency, and heck, we'll compare it to the BetaFPV P1 system as well. Excess latency that I really noticed while I was flying. I could work around it, but I really had to rein myself in, and there was a lot of things I felt like I couldn't do. This system is like, I could tell the latency is there if I start to like, if I get to like a 6 out of 10 on the effort meter. Like the previous systems, I had to stay at like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. With this one, I get to a 6 or 7 out of 10, and then I start to feel the latency. But that is a vast chasm in terms of like the number of people for whom this is probably going to be a usable system. And keep in mind that this whole video transmitter and camera together is $40. Okay, so if you're like, oh, it's not as good as DJI. Yeah, no, it isn't. DJI, you're going to pay $140 for the Lite and over $200 for the Pro. So like you decide. There is a lot of people for whom the range and image quality is great. For whom like the range and image quality, I'll give this like 7 or 8 out of 10 compared to DJI, which is like 11 out of 10, and the original walk-snail system, which is like an 8 or 9 out of 10, maybe 6 or 7 for this. Range and image quality, especially watt for watt. This is only 500 milliwatts. If they come out with a 2-watt version of this, I think it's going to be very competitive with everything else on the market in terms of range and image quality. Latency, it could be better. But there are a lot of people, the type of flying they're doing, if you're doing fixed wing, if you're doing long range or medium range multi-rotor stuff, if you're doing even just cruising, even frankly cinematic flying, where you don't need like split-second reflexes, I feel like this system is extremely viable. If you think it's viable, there's links in the video description below where you can pick it up. They are affiliate links and you should use them because I get a little kickback every time you use them, and it's one of the simplest ways for you to support me. You don't want to join my Patreon? I don't know why not, but that's on you. Just click the affiliate links. You want to look at the BetaFPV P1 system? It's going to get better too. But you want to see what it looked like when I reviewed it, I'll put a card on screen. Ooh, wind's kicking up. You hear the wind chimes going? I got to get out of here. Card on screen, BetaFPV P1 and the 100 milliwatt version of this in the Caddx Protos. 2 cards on screen. You can see how this system is evolving. This is a major step forward. Good job, Caddx.